Blog Talk Radio.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I don't sleep all day. I know it seems like I sleep all day and I'm up all night, but I don't sleep all day and I am not up all night. Welcome to the broadcast, and my name is Willie Lawson, and it is a special program this afternoon. We're going to have my friend Kevin McGary on the program, and Kevin is going to talk to us about the Frederick Douglass Foundation. I found out about the Frederick Douglass Republican group a long time ago, a number of years ago, with my friend, and my names escape me. I'll think about it in a second, because I'm old and names escape me. But it's interesting that I'm hearing about it again, because Frederick Douglass seems to be the best way, really, the absolute best way to get into a discussion with the African American community about things that concern the African American community, and not be, I'm going to say this word. This word's kind of a weird word, Republican-y, or what I actually call bumper sticker Republicans. They have all the ready phrases. That's not who Frederick Douglass was. And in most people, I tell you what, once they know who Frederick Douglass was and what Frederick Douglass was all about, then they are a lot more likely to sort of gloss themselves as Frederick Douglass Republicans, as opposed to the Republicans that we might see, or the caricatures of Republicans that we might see on television. And hear about in the news on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and the like. So it's a tremendous way to interact with the African American community, especially, but not entirely. A lot of people who aren't black identify themselves as Frederick Douglass Republicans. So now you're going to ask, well, what's that all about? Well, that's why I have a guest. That's why my friend Kevin is coming on. Kevin. I first saw Kevin on Facebook. You feel me? On Facebook a while ago, and I saw that he was killing it. He was out there doing great stuff and saying great things. And then we, like things go, we kind of lost touch. And then, strangely enough, I met him in California this past year. So it was really exciting to hear from him again. And I just knew that what I hadn't done, I needed to get done. I needed to have him on the program to talk about Frederick Douglass and the Frederick Douglass Foundation, what it's about, where it came from, his interaction with it, and what it's doing today. Now, what we're going to do is take a little break, just a little break, to ring the register, and we'll be back with Kevin McGary of the Frederick Douglass Foundation. Thank you so much. We'll be back right after these messages. Hi, this is Willie Lawson. You know, with so much content whizzing around out there, there's only one storytelling platform that helps you keep calm and stay informed and inspired. It's Flipboard. Yeah, Flipboard curates the world story so you can be smarter in your work, life, and play. Choose from thousands of topics to personalize Flipboard and get the latest stories from the best publishers and experts delivered to you 24/7. When you see stories that you want to save or share, just tap the plus button and add them to your private or public collections. It's that simple. It's used by millions of people every day. Flipboard is how people move themselves and the world forward. So get started now at flipboard.com. That's flipboard.com. Are you looking for a reliable transportation, but you don't have a bunch of money? Are you wary of used car types? And you should be. You just need a car you can afford and a dealer you can trust. Great news. Good Guy Cars is here. John Desbrow is something you don't find every day. An honest used car dealer. Good Guy Cars is at 8412 Industrial Boulevard in Tampa, Florida. The phone number is 813-999-9992. That's 813-999-9992. The web address is www.goodguycars.com. All right, we're back. We're back. Thank you ever so much for spending time with us today because, like I said all the time, the most valuable thing that you have is your time, and where you spend is very important. That's why I'm humbled. It is great. My friend Kevin is already on the line. He's already called in. Man, this dude is like on point all the time. This is what's really going to be cool. So you guys are really, really in for a treat today, and you're going to want to share this program with pretty much everybody that you know, all your friends and all your enemies and all your frenemies, all your Republican friends, your Democrat friends, your progressive and conservative friends or acquaintances, because this is something, unfortunately, that a lot of people have not heard about. I'm going to bring him on right now if I press the button. Kevin, good afternoon or good morning, yes, depending on where you happen to be in the country.
Yes, sir, Mr. Willie. How are you?
I'm not bad for an older fella. I'm not. I've been much worse. So I am thankful. I'm grateful.
It's an honor and a pleasure for me to be here with you.
I don't think
your introduction was very generous and gracious, and thank you for the kind words. I hope I can live up to at least a partial of what
you can live up to.
You've already said about me.
You can live up to the truth, Kevin. Come on now. And I don't think I've had you here before, which is really something that where I've failed, and for that I apologize.
Well, I mean, we're living in an America that's really tugging at all of us collectively and tugging us in different directions at the same time, while we're trying to live and prosper at the same time. So. It's fine. We couldn't make it work, but I'm glad to be here today, and I'm just honored to be a guest of yours on your show.
Well, thank you so much. And you're right, because all of us are just trying to live indoors. I always say to people, what are you trying to do today? Trying to live indoors. That's it.
That's right.
Because I am too old and too fat to be living outside. That's all there is to it. So if I can just live indoors, that's my main goal.
That's it.
You know what? I heard about this organization a few years ago, and I don't know why the gentleman's name escapes me right now that I heard it from initially. You may remember. I think he lives in Alabama now. Why can't I remember his name?
Well, let's see. Alabama.
K. Carl Smith. There you go. K. Carl Smith.
Okay. Yeah, so K. Carl, so he has a Frederick Douglass organization. It is not the Frederick Douglass Foundation, which is
gotcha.
So there's a number of Frederick Douglass organizations out there, which are really trying to capture the legacy and the imagination and the standards that were so incredibly set by such an honorable man as Frederick Douglass. So you could imagine a man with such stature that there would be a number of entities trying to represent him. And ours just happens to be the Frederick Douglass Foundation of California. We have multiple chapters across the country, but it's the Frederick Douglass Foundation is really what separates us from all of the other entities.
I understand. Super duper. Now that's all cleared up. Yay me and clarity. Tell us about, because a lot of people don't really know who Frederick Douglass was and any of his history. So if you could give us the Cliff Note version of who Frederick Douglass was for our audience, I would be highly appreciative.
Yeah, I'd gladly do that. A lot of people have heard of Douglass, people like me who have grown up in inner city schools or, public schools of some sort. There's a little bit that would be said about Douglass, but there's no deep dive into his background and history and legacy unless you had to write a book report about it. So he is a character, historical figure that could easily get lost, but his legacy is, I like to characterize him as the quintessential American patriot, hero, and statesman. I don't think there's been a life even marginally comparable to the life that God allowed the Honorable Frederick Douglass to live. I mean, surely he went through hardship and challenges and all kinds of things, many, many pivot points in his life. But at the end of the day, America is America because of Frederick Douglass. And there's a lot of reasons why I would say that. Let me go into a little bit of his background and try to connect the dots as best as I can as to his impact on American history. So he was actually born Frederick Augustus Bailey. He was he was a product of rape. His mother had been raped and abused by her white slave master, and he was a product of that. And I'll just say here today, just a brief segue. Today we're talking about ending the life of all babies who are a product of rape and incest and even born alive.
I was thinking the very same thing while you were saying that.
And even born alive. And here is a perfect example of what could have or would have happened if we had had such barbaric ways, even back in the 1800s, back then. But anyway, he was a product of that, and actually didn't really know his mother. He saw her a couple of times, but what happened back then is that they would quickly separate the babies from the mothers, and they would basically sequester all of the kids in some kind of a communal type situation. So he was actually raised by his grandmother. He believed it was his actual maternal grandmother. So, and she was raising all of the kids, sort of from baby through to toddler. And so there were a number of his cousins and other kids in the community that Grandma was overseeing. And the reason why they separate him from the mother very early, very quickly, is so there's no maternal feelings and maternal issues that arise at that. So they separated him early. Anyway, he started to grow up in this sort of living situation with his grandmother and these other children. And by the time he was, I believe it was 6 or 7, he was introduced to his grandmother, walked him to his first slave home, and she tried to best prepare him as she could, being that he was just a young kid at the time. He couldn't quite absorb what it would mean, but it was actually fortuitous for him because the slave family that he went to had never had a slave before, and so they really just wanted a playmate for little Tommy, and so they had little Freddie and little Tommy. They quickly allowed the boys to just play together and become close, good friends, and Freddie, over time, the mother of the house started to teach the boys to read, and her husband came home one day and said, "What are you doing? Wait, what are you doing?" And she says, "Well, I'm teaching the boys to read. Little Freddie and little Tom. Oh boy, Freddie has quite a penchant for the alphabet, and he's really learning how to read, and he's articulating well." And he says, "No, you can't do that. Don't do that anymore, because if a slave learns to read, he's no more good." And I'm paraphrasing. I'm trying to, accelerate the story, but essentially that was, and of course, little Freddie was there and heard that, and he says, "Aha!" So the key to freedom, whether I'm in chains or not, is to be educated, to to learn to read, to learn to write, to learn to articulate, because that's the key to freedom, because he heard what the slave master said. And so he felt it was God's divine hand actually teaching him how to master the art of reading. Because after that, the mother of the house stopped, and he felt like, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, he'd get up and he'd go down to the study and start to open up some books. And he found his mother's Bible. He started reading that, and he really thought it was the hand of God helping him to continue his craft of learning to read and articulate and pronounce words and all of the sort. So he actually did become quite masterful as a very, very young boy. And he wanted to help set the rest of the folks free as well. So even though they were all enslaved, what he decided to do is he'd start a Sunday school out in the shed. And so he actually, he actually wanted to teach all the other slaves to read, but he had to do something under the auspices of something spiritual. So he says, every Sunday or maybe during the week, he'd say, "Can I go out to the shed to just do a Bible study?" And so he started to do that kind of thing, and actually began to teach a lot of the elders and older people in the community how to read as well. And so that was sort of what he did. He had the opportune time to, as he began to get older, to try to escape. He tried it a couple times. At one time, he was beat within an inch of his life, and then ultimately he did become successful and did escape. I think he was 19 at the time. He went up north and worked at the shipyards in New York for a very short period of time, and they started to reclaim slaves as far north as that. And he knew that he had to get going further north, so he went up to ended up in the sort of New England, Boston area. And he was quickly adopted by a Northern Democrat family who were abolitionists, but they were Democrat, and they adopted him in the sense that they heard of him, they recognized that he was a very, very talented young man at that point. They took him under their wings and started to really perfect his writing skills and his oratory, and he stayed with them for a while, and when they started to reclaim as far north as in those areas, he had the opportunity to go overseas and actually be an honored guest of Europe for about 2.5 years. So he went through Europe, Ireland, some of those other areas. And again, this was after the incredible deeds done by William Wilberforce over in Europe. So the slavery was fully abolished at that time. And it's amazing when you look at all of the lineages, all of the connect points where God's divine hand actually worked to lay the groundwork for people like Douglass, and then after for people like us to sort of stand on the shoulders of people like that who did such incredible instrumental work and laying the foundations for us. But anyway, Wilberforce laid that for people like Douglass. Douglass really took advantage of that and became an honored guest. Now, you have to think about this. Here you have an escaped slave, 1800s, black man in Europe, and literally an honored guest of Europe for a couple years. That is just right there. That's pretty. That's astounding to kind of think about that. And then when he came back, he actually came back with some backers who wanted to back him in his own business. So he started a publishing business, and it was North Star Publishing. He published newspapers and magazines and just different publications, and actually became quite a bit even more well known. And because of the work and his oratory skills and his speeches and all of that had really went around the world, by that time his North Star Publishing was catching on quite well. And it was an abolitionist newspaper. And then he had the opportunity to, actually get politically involved, because he realized that if we're ever going to be free, it's got to really start somewhere where the power rests, and the power and authority rests. And so at one off chance, he had the opportunity to go to the back door of the White House at the time and asked to meet with Abraham Lincoln. And you can imagine you have this black man showing up, signing his card at the back door, saying, "Hey, I want to meet with the president." That's kind of outrageous even back then. and are you still with me? You okay?
I'm still here.
Okay. Do we have to take? Just let me know when you have to take a break. But
no, we're good. We're good.
Okay, good. And so he did that, and he just said, "Can you just let the president know that Frederick Douglass is here?" And his Secret Service went and took his card to President Lincoln, and Lincoln said, "You mean Frederick Douglass is here?" And he said, "Yeah, some black guy out back, he looks, And Lincoln stood from his desk. He says, "Oh, bring him in, bring him in." He just couldn't believe that Frederick Douglass would show up. He was, and so when Douglass walks in, Abraham Lincoln was already standing still, and he says, "The Honorable Frederick Douglass." And Douglass did the same. Honorable President Lincoln, it's a pleasure to meet you. They were really kindred spirits from the start. And what's interesting and so enlightening and so prescient about that relationship is that was when Lincoln was working on the Emancipation Proclamation, and he needed to refine the way that he was going to get that done. But he knew he had Congress he had to go through. He knew all this stuff, and so he started to share these plans with Douglass. He says, "Look, I'm trying to figure out how do we get this done? How do we do this?" And so he and Douglass worked on refining the Emancipation Proclamation. And at the end of the day, Douglass told him, he says, "Mr. President, this is the single most important executive executive action that you can take in American history." And to this day, a lot of people don't know or hadn't realized that Emancipation Proclamation did not go through Congress. And actually, Douglass admonished him not to, because he says, "Look, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of more slaves being killed between now and the time this ultimately passes. And this can't wait. We have too many people being slaughtered, being maimed, being lynched daily, and this is the time. This is the moment." So President Lincoln actually took Douglass's recommendation and did this through through his pen. He didn't have a pen and a phone back then. I don't know, whatever they did. But and to this day, it stands as the single most important presidential proclamation in our history. And so he got it done. And, of course, the fallout from that was the Civil War and all of that. And Douglass was instrumental in that. He helped the president stand up the Black Regiment. So he did some recruiting for that. He was the first African-American in the U.S. Marshal Service, first African-American ambassador to Haiti, first African-American on a presidential ticket. He was actually nominated for vice president on a ticket back in the day. He was the first African-American to be an executive over a bank. He was the first African-American to literally be on the inner circle of 4 U.S. presidents, because after Lincoln got assassinated, then he was still in the inner circle of 3 additional presidents after that time. So his life is just it's just an incredible journey from being born into slavery, a product of rape, being beat to within an inch of his life, being abused by his white slave masters for a long period of time, really hating whites at some points of time, then being adopted by a white family, Northern Democrats, and then going over to Europe. It was pretty much all whites over there who adopted him and treated him with kindness and love and helped him fund his first entrepreneurial enterprise. Becomes an entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur. In today's dollars, it'd be worth about $10 million in today's dollars, the North Star Publishing. And then fully reconciling himself to actually begin to endear himself to whites and love whites. I mean, he had a great relationship with President Abraham Lincoln. They had so much respect and admiration for each other. It was a relationship that God had, himself had divinely inspired and put in front of them, and they wrestled with it for a moment, but they fully embraced it. And what came out of that is that you and I are free today, and so many others are free today, and we get to enjoy the fruits of standing on the shoulders of great men like Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, and seeing an America like we see today. I mean, one of the things that came up that was kind of interesting in that relationship as well is Lincoln, his first iterations of emancipation. He says, "Yeah, and we're gonna go ahead and we'll get some ships. We'll make sure that we actually send, your African brothers and sisters back to Africa." And Douglass stood up and says, "Wait. No, that's not happening." He says, "We want this flag. We adore this flag. We want to fully partake in the fruits of what the United States has. We don't know anything about Africa, nor do we want to know. We are here now, and we want to, because Douglass was well read, so he read the Constitution and read the Declaration, and he's like, "No, man, this is it right here. This is what we."
Well, yeah, and by then, even Douglass wasn't from Africa. He had no connection. He had really no connection to Africa. And by the time that he had spoken to Lincoln, after he'd come back from Europe, there were a generation of slaves or former slaves at that point who had no connection to Africa. So it'd be like sending me back to San Francisco because you were sending me home. Well, my home's not in San Francisco. My home is actually in New Jersey. And please don't send me back there.
Exactly right. You got it exactly right. I mean, there was no connection. Not only that, but where would you go in Africa? How would you even think about, and he had read about, the African nations at that time. They were pretty tribal and pretty, comparatively speaking to sort of the well-manicured colonies that were rising up here in the United States in comparison. He thought, no, America has its issues, but this is the place to be. Now, just imagine if that message was actually sent to the millennials today who actually hate America, think America is the pariah of the world. And you had slaves who endured atrocious beatings and seen their family members killed and maimed and slain and lynched, and yet they wanted to remain American because of America's ideals. And yet we have kids today, millennials, and a lot of older leftists who disdain America.
People who are my age. Well, and the problem, I see all this. I taught in the public school system for 15.1 years, and just the story that you told, the thumbnail sketch of Douglass's life, was never, ever talked about in that manner. So nobody had any idea. So no one have any idea. What in the world? Oh, is that you? Oh my God. No idea that any of that actually happened or went on. Nobody, and especially in black schools or black neighborhoods where black little kids, and especially growing up even during my time, needed black heroes who participated in the founding and the fathering of this nation.
Yes.
Always, and what unfortunately what people my age and younger learned, that Roots was a document. They thought Roots was a documentary.
Wow.
Well, I mean, if you talk to the millennials now, and you talk to people who are my age, and you talk about slavery, their picture is Kunta Kinte. And they think that it was a documentary, that all the things that happened there's never any context, and there's never any, I mean, except for the one scene where there were some murders, but there was never anything other than what was going on in that narrative, which we found out later that most of it was fictional. It was a 7-day TV show. So why and even now, why not talk about Douglass? Why don't you think people are now? I think I know the answer, but why aren't people talking about Douglass and embracing Douglass, especially in Black communities, especially there in places like Chicago, especially in East St. Louis, especially in Compton, especially in Atlanta, especially in Harlem? Harlem most got white folks now, don't it? Yeah,
exactly
especially
right.
in those places where young kids need to see those heroes. They don't need to see Cardi B as a hero
Right.
or Jay-Z as a hero.
Right.
They need to see
Right.
real heroes who did amazing things under incredible circumstances.
In incredible circumstances, and if you look back historically, they had issues with racism, slavery, and all of that, but they would not let those issues prevent them from being all God created them to be. They pursued with all zeal greatness. And when I say they, I mean you got Harriet Tubman, who was great in her own right, doing what she was doing and setting the slaves free, who was also a compatriot of Frederick Douglass. Then you had other great women who worked side by side on the women's suffrage issue. They weren't Black, but they were instrumental in setting women free, and that was Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who were also compatriots and contemporaries of Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass worked with them hand in hand. So all of these civil rights movements, setting slaves free, setting women free, setting Blacks free, all pivoted around one man who God raised up at that time. His name was Frederick Douglass. And while he knew that he had to fight the racism and hatred and vile tactics of the KKK, the Democrat KKK, and everything they wanted to do to him and anyone else who was Black, he did not use that as a vice, as a victimization card, as a way of staying complacent, as a way of accepting, hey, well, these white racist folks, slave owners, got all of the power and the money, so I can't do anything. So therefore, I'm just going to stay here and just let it slip away. No. He went for it all, and he went for it all not with just his personal family in mind, but with us in mind. Generations away, what would the net impact be? And he could never have imagined that he would have set America free on its path, a path of greatness, and that he and Lincoln, with what they did with emancipation and then subsequent civil rights movements that he spawned. Yes, we had great civil rights leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King and others, but everything started with Frederick Douglass. Everything started with Douglass.
There would have been nothing had there not been the Emancipation Proclamation and done the way that Douglass suggested. There would have been nothing.
There would have been nothing. And then and then you look at Douglass, you look at Booker T. Washington, these two great, honorable, entrepreneurial, flag-waving, flag-loving American heroes and patriots are purposely ignored, in my opinion, because they were well-known Republicans, number one. Number two, they actually were entrepreneurial and very successful. And number three, they never complained about being a victim and not being able to achieve because, the white man's got all the money and the power. This is So their narrative, their entire legacy is completely different than what the millennials and the professors want to hear and preach about today. And so that's why the inconvenient truth about the legacy of these great men and women in the 1800s, it's being whitewashed. Being revisioned out of relevancy.
What a great choice of words, my friend. It is being whitewashed, and it is a shame. So to that, tell me what Frederick Douglass Foundation is all about, and how is it moving forward in removing the whitewash and getting the message of Douglass to places where it needs to be.
So the Frederick Douglass Foundation is a 501c4. It is a political-minded organization, and what we're hoping to do is to, really help sensitize people to Douglass and his legacy and what he had done and how important he's been to our faith. He was also an ordained minister. As a statesman, as a patriot, and all. And it's easier for us to talk about, tough issues like abortion. Douglass was completely anti-abortion. He was all in with, like I said, the women's suffrage movement, and they were anti-abortion. And abortions were happening back then, so, but he was completely against it. He believed in life. He recognized that, look, if you had taking stances like, rape and incest and just started, let's just abort all of the slave children because they're inconvenient, because a lot of them had been fostered by the slave masters at the time, then he realized he wouldn't be here. And so he saw the injustice in that. He says, how are we going to proclaim to be a just society when we're just going to make, these arbitrary, assessments and start wiping out people. So anyway, so we can go into, and so what we're doing is we're trying to engage the urban communities, mostly urban churches, black and brown churches, and work with pastors. And in the context and under the auspices of Frederick Douglass, bring up these relevant issues. Because it's easier to point to a great, great man who's lived it out than for us to say, well, in our opinion, we think that you should be voting this way and that way. And so we try to sensitize them to accurate history, how important it was at that time for Douglass to have done what he's done, and how it actually helped alight the churches and the various ministries, and how we should as opposed to just go in with the secular humanist side of things when we go to the ballot box. Maybe we should have a pause. Maybe we should think about, first of all, the Word of God and what our responsibility is to it, but we can think about other people in history and their examples before we start to continue to just kind of by rote and by reflex pull for a particular party.
That's very true, because what we found out is that when you start with picking a particular party, especially if it's not Democrat, what happens in the urban community is that you get immediate shutdown. Immediate.
Yep.
So
we go in and we talk about Douglass, the shifts and the pivots and all of that. We talk about, why would Douglass make such a statement like, I'm a black, dyed-in-the-wool Republican because it's the only party of freedom and progress. What was happening at that time? Why would he say such a thing? What was his life story before then? How did he arrive at that point? We start to unpack that, and we start to make, relevant conclusions to today and what we're facing, what we're seeing, and so we try to engage them and challenge them, and at the end of the day, what we love to do is to just get the black community to start holding themselves and all of our elected officials accountable. And the only way we're going to hold, especially the leftist Democrats, accountable to our community, since we're 97% of their much-needed voting bloc, the only way we're going to hold them accountable is to start voting differently and say, no, you're not. I'm not going to be a voting bloc that you can just count on every time you show up, or every few years, or every 4 years, and you just count on me, and just know that I want to take my eyes off the ball and just let you do what you do, and then you come back and we're still in the same place. We've been doing that for too many generations now, and we as a black community have got to be better. And the only way for us to be better, or one of the most meaningful ways for us to be better at that, is to truly vote for people who align with our values and our principles, who align with the Word of God. I challenge even any word of faith. I challenge any religious person, in air quotes, to come up with any of their religious documents that would wholeheartedly approve of infanticide. I'm astounded that the leftist Democrats would get a single vote, especially
It's
from
amazing.
any people of faith. Are you kidding
It's
me?
absolutely amazing. It is absolutely amazing. Tomorrow I've got a gentleman on. He is out of Philadelphia, and I met him on Instagram. Strangely enough, that is, he called Planned Parenthood Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
Because the idea is, especially, I don't understand especially in the African American community, how hard it is to simply look at the truth and the history of Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger and the like, and embrace anybody who promotes it.
That's right.
At all. How is
That's
it
right.
even possible?
It's amazing. The only way it's possible,
my mind.
Willie, and you and I know this, the only way it's possible is we hear from Mom and them, Grandma and them, Auntie and them, everybody and them who say, just go and register and just vote Democrat. And so we just think that, okay, I'm black, I'm supposed to. So we've been sort of, it's been handed down, it's been indoctrinated, and it's kind of been embraced. And all we're doing is we're trying to say, hey, why don't we start thinking independently now? The times have changed. These parties have changed considerably. The JFK Democrats of old are really
they're all dead.
Your moderate or more conservative Republicans today. I mean,
crazy.
So yeah, I mean, and so since the parties have changed so much, doesn't that require that we take a step back and start to do some level of introspection and take a look at things and say, you know what? I don't think I'm going to do what Mama and them, Grandmama and them, Auntie and them, everybody and them do. I'm going to do something different because this is what's important for me based on my faith, based on who I am, based on my community, and I want to see some different actions take place. That's what you do.
And I'm telling you that, and I don't want to turn this into anything about, the Orange Plague. I do.
Right.
But real quick, there is a county in north central Florida, Jefferson County. It's about as big as my living room. It's pretty much all black, and pretty much all and Democrats have led the way there for years and years and years until 2016, where it had gone for every Democrat president for and I'm saying easily 40 years.
Yep.
Jefferson County went for Trump.
Wow.
And here's what I think happened. Exactly what you're saying. I think some younger people got into the polls and saw the choices and went, saw how they've been living, saw things that had been going on in the country. There had been 8 years of President Obama still, and they look at their lives and look at their friends and look at their situation and went, maybe it's time to do something different. Screw it, Trump. And you, from where I live, you could hear Democrats in Jefferson County wailing.
Yep.
Because they never ever expected, in that little bitty county, for those black folks, and mostly young black folks and mostly young black men, to say, wait a minute, and reassessing all of this. And I think that's what we have to get to. We can get to the point, Kevin, where we can just get people through organizations like Frederick Douglass Foundation to just start doing introspection and reassessing what we've done for the past, as communities for the past 50 years, and think, maybe we should think about this differently. And that's all I ever hope to do. I want you to, I tell my Republican friends here, it's like, you can't deputize me and send me into the hood to recruit, because I ain't doing that.
Right.
I'm just not doing it.
That's right.
What I will do.
Well, and this is why I applaud, and and she always takes a lot of heat from people that you and I know, and black conservatives who have been in the fight for a while. But this is why I applaud Candace Owens, right, who starts Blexit. It's a start, and it's really a movement that could really start with that millennial segment, Millennial Blacks. And see, the Millennial Blacks, I really do think is a ripe harvest, and here's why I think so. They don't have the baggage of the civil rights era that our parents did, and our parents and grandparents. And so, the older seasoned folk, let's just call them seasoned folk, they seen and heard and a lot that maybe you and I just can't even fathom. And the racial tensions go way deep with them because they lived in a time and in a season where it was in your face. And so for them, all you got to do is it's like Pavlov's dogs, right? You just say the word and they have a particular reaction. And this is what the Democrats have been doing.
It's visceral for some of them.
Oh yeah. And this is what the Democrat Party has been doing for decades, right? It's just every 2 and 4 years they're saying a word, racist, and boom, the reaction is automatic. Oh, I ain't voting for him. I'm going for this one. Racist, and in the context of the Republican Party, and therefore it's been ingrained that I could never vote Republican because that is the party of racists, right? So, but the millennials they don't have any firsthand accounts of any of that stuff. It's the, they hear a little bit here and there, and if they go to higher education, their professors try to re-indoctrinate them and ingrain them. But those who are working class millennials are really, in my opinion, the ripe harvest that they're less indoctrinated and more reasonable in their thinking, and they're actually rebellious in many ways, and they don't want to necessarily do it mom and them, grandmom and them, and everybody and them told them to do. So they'll take a pause and say, you know what, I'm going to vote wherever I want to vote, and if I think that it's this person or that person because I'm vibing with them right now, then guess what? I'm just going to do that, Mama. That's it. You know what I'm saying? So, I think there is opportunity there. I think we need movements like Blexit and Lexit and Jexit and all of the other its to work those segments, because come 2020, we're going to need all hands on deck to really pull President Trump through the finish line. It's going to be a fight.
I think you're absolutely right.
Even with the Democrats as crazy as they are and demonic as they are, it's going to be a dogfight, So.
Well, yeah, you know what, and I think you're right. And I've said, and especially to some of the people that that both of us know, I've said that everybody in this has an office, a space, and I've sort of likened it to the fivefold ministry. Everybody's got a place in the body. And some people are better at some things than they are at others. When I was in California, when was I in California? I don't know.
That was October, I think it was.
October. Okay. Thanks for remembering, Kevin. Although we did share an Uber ride together, but I don't remember when the heck it was. We the group I was with, Urban Game Changers. We did two events. We did Politicon. And we did what's that street event down there in South Central over by
LA
the
Live or something like that.
Yeah, whatever. Where the Nation of Islam served for security. That kind of blew me away. But okay. In any case, there were certain people in our organization who were really good, sort of at the street evangelism level. Stopping people on the street and asking them questions and even getting into back and forth. But they weren't as good at Politicon, which it was a completely, totally different vibe. So there's places for all of us. There are places. There's people to do street evangelism. There are places for people to do commentary. There are places for people to do research, teaching, all sorts of things. So when I try to tell people that, so yes, maybe. People like Ken and so on is a new pretty black girl, maybe. Okay. And because frankly, at one point, people thought Sonny Johnson was a new pretty black girl. Right. You know what I'm saying? So but everybody is going to be able to talk to different people, and I think you're right.
That's right.
I think Candace talks to a whole group of people that, as an old gray hair, that I'm never going to be able to connect with. Never.
Exactly right. That's the point. Yep. Yep.
So,
and you're right. Likening it to the fivefold ministries, I think that's a good parallel. We all have a part to play, and none of us have the full skill set to do everything and do everything well. There are some that are raised up to do a very specific thing within our segment and make a huge change. And why can't we, even if we don't understand it, we don't quite vibe with them, we don't get it, but if they're having a positive impact and people are being changed and they're being challenged, let's support them. I mean, why not? We're in a real spiritual battle here. It's very, very real. The consequences are real and devastating. So for us to say, well, I don't like this person and I don't like their style and I don't like how they do it, are you kidding me? We got souls at stake here. Are you kidding?
We just don't have the luxury of being picky that way. We just don't have the luxury anymore. We are truly in desperate times. When you see governors of states, of U.S. states, sitting there on radio programs saying that, well, what happens if the baby is born? We'll make the baby comfortable, even resuscitate the baby, and then the doctor and the mother will decide what to do next. What do you mean they'll decide what to do next?
Right.
There's a baby there. There's no other decisions to make about the baby other than maybe if the mom wants to give the child up for adoption. That's the only decision that can be made. There's no decision about the child's health at that point. But no, we are past that. We're we're going to throw the child into a volcano as a sacrifice.
That's exactly right.
That's where we are. So we don't have the luxury of looking for somebody or an individual that that fits exactly how we feel about how we say stuff and who we say it to. We just don't have that luxury anymore. So we've got to be more. And I think that especially Black and brown conservatives have to be a lot more open to who's ever talking to whomever. If you can reach them, go reach them, please. Thank you. Because you know what, I'm an old gray hair. I'm the same people aren't listening to me, and that's okay.
That's right.
I don't hurt my feelings, but you know what? I'm glad there are other people who are out there doing that. So you know what, and I think that moving forward, I think if the Frederick Douglass message is a message that is can be the glue for a lot of people. That may be the glue to bring back some of the gray hairs like me, who are looking for reasons. They see, but they're looking for reasons. They're looking for a historical basis for making some changes. And they may be more open to the Frederick Douglass message than maybe someone younger, possibly. So that's what that's why I think the Frederick Douglass Foundation, the Frederick Douglass message is so very important. And when I found out that you were involved, that you are are you the state chair? Are you the Grand Poobah out there?
I'm the chairman of the California chapter. We have a fantastic president, Rochelle Connor, and our founder is Walter Hoy. So I'm in rarefied air with some tremendous individuals.
Really?
Yes. So he's the founder. I'm the chairman, and Rochelle is the president, and we're just in here fighting the fight, man, trying to make sure that we do our part to see if we can be used in an incredible way to help bring a change. I mean, California is in desperate situations spiritually, desperate. We're just in dire straits, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
and
there's a poop app. There's a poop app for San Francisco, right?
Oh yeah. Now here's the other thing that really astounds me. Here's the other thing that astounds me is we have so many people that are saying, no. Let all people from all over the world just come over. And then here's the thing. Here's the real gut-wrenching thing about those types of statements is we have American citizens living on the streets in Los Angeles, 35,000 plus, and San Francisco, 20,000 plus.
Wow.
And they don't have a place to stay. These people that come in from these other countries and nations in South America, they get vouchers. They get room and board. They get, and so literally, and they get medical services. And so literally we're taking good, hard-earned money that have come from the taxpayers of, and I'll speak for California, and instead of appropriating it to help our homeless citizens who may need all kinds of additional services, we say, oh, no, screw them. They're not a vote. These other folks, they're motivated. They're a vote. We're going to spend the money on them and let them come in here. Are you kidding me? Now, this is evil. When you really think about this, it's heartbreaking, but it's, you know, the level of debased humanity, the ice water running through your veins to make such a horrible value judgment based upon the people here and the people coming. It's evil, man. I mean, what do you say about that? And so what President Trump is just trying to do, first of all, he's trying to protect the people who would put their lives and their bodies at risk, trying to just get here. I mean, we understand the motivation. There's a lot of inducement to come here. But the horrible trek, these young women and girls who are being raped multiple times during the trek, and at high percentages, up to 70% by some estimate, is in itself a human atrocity. It's a human rights travesty that's happening with these people. And then when they get here, the travesty that we then put on our American citizens, and we basically kick them to the curb and say, no, we're gonna cater to these people now. It's just all around. It's just messed up.
It is messed up.
And so we have a president now that says, look, I'm going to bring some sanity to this. We got to do this right. We got to take care of our own citizens. And then we've got to have a way to kind of figure out who's coming in. We got people from Congo and the Himalayas and Bermuda, and all kinds of people from all over the world. We don't know what their motivations are. We have no idea who they are.
It's one of those things for me because I'm a very simple person. All you guys are really smart and have high IQs. I am aggressively average. So I have to think about things a little differently. We are in a position where we're in an airplane. The cabin has lost pressure.
Yep.
The masks have dropped, and now we're trying to shove the mask on the children. Because the idea because in that situation you have to put it on yourself first before you can help anybody. And if we don't do that as a nation, if we don't decide we have to help ourselves first before we can be in condition to do what Americans have traditionally done.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. I like that.
We will not be able to continue any of those works ever because we won't be able to take care of ourselves. And we're already getting there. When you have that blew me away that I asked, there were 35,000, by estimate, homeless people in Los Angeles. Everywhere I went, we were at the 1010. I tell you all the time, I was on Wilshire Boulevard, famous Wilshire Boulevard, at the 1010 in the business district, and I looked out the window and saw a tent city. How is this possible?
Yeah. It's just
seems
horrible.
to care.
Yeah, and now we're bringing over, the bubonic plague, Ebola. Are you kidding me?
Ebola's back. The bubonic plague is back. Typhoid is back. Typhus is back in L.A.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna need a big fence.
These are illnesses that were cured during the Dark Ages. I mean, are you kidding me? And they're back. And measles is becoming epidemic again. And these are incredible. We used to have measles, chickenpox, and all that stuff when I was growing up. But man, for the past several decades, I hadn't heard anybody with those types of things, right?
Nope, not at all.
They're back in vogue. I mean, we're fighting the fight now. It's like, are you kidding me? This is crazy.
We have to have another conversation sooner than later because there's going to be. I have a feeling between now and November of next year, there's going to be a bunch to talk about. I just got that feeling. I don't know. All right, so we need to get out of here. Thank you ever so much for coming by and having a good time with me. I've had a great time. You've taught us a lot about Frederick Douglass, and we're going to learn a lot more about Frederick Douglass and the Frederick Douglass Foundation moving forward. We have to reconnect again. So thank you ever so much. And,
it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Really
if you're in Florida or on the East Coast, let me know, and then we can hook up, and then you can buy me lunch.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Well, thank you ever so much. We need to get out of here and make room for somebody else. So until we see you again,
all right.
y'all go out there and love somebody, learn something, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.
God bless you. We'll see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.